the pleasure of Shri Shri Radha Mulidhar, Gaur Chandra, Shri Prabhupada, and also Shri Shri Radha Govinda, we have our dear Achita Gopti Devi Mataji. Thank you so much for giving us your association, Ekadashi after Ekadashi. So we're so happy to have you, Hare Krishna. Eager to hear from you.
Jai Hare Krishna. Shri Shri Radha Murlidhar ki jai, Shri Shri Radha Govinda Dev ki jai, Shri Gaura Chandra Mahaprabhu ki jai. So just before this lecture, I was thinking about how grateful I was.
Recording in progress.
To be able to give this lecture. And I said a prayer to all of our lords that no matter what happens or doesn't happen, no matter how life resumes or doesn't resume, I pray that we continue these, and I pray that I'm somehow or other allowed to continue to do this seva, because really it's become something that holds me together, and it's become something that I genuinely look forward to. It keeps my spiritual life on track, making sure that everything is going smoothly. So thank you for allowing me to be with all the devotees once again. So happy. We'll start with our Mangala Charana. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Shtapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namini Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasa Adi Gaura Bhakti Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyev cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. So today's Ekadashi lecture is dedicated to the glorious pastimes of Srivasa Thakura. Just yesterday, for many of us, was his disappearance. And so I thought we can talk about Srivasa Thakura. During the last 2 weeks, we also had a celebration for Srivakeshwar Pandit. But I thought, let's talk about Srivasa. We've spoken about Srivasa Thakura before, but I felt as though it's important to talk about him again, because he factors in quite importantly in our Panchatattva. And in order to gain the knowledge of Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu and find out different ways of entrance and deeper entrance into his pastimes, we need our Panchatattva. In fact, we are often reciting this Panchatattva mantra before kirtan, before japa, before lectures, before Krishna Katha, before so many things we are chanting this Panchatattva mantra, but do we know who they are? How often do we sit and really meditate on who we're calling out to and the mercy that we're calling out for as we sing Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. So are we thinking about our transcendental boy band? All 5 members. Not just like the 2 main singers. You know, we think about Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Sri Nityananda Prabhu all the time. We even hear so much about Advaita Acharya, right? As Sadashiva, Mahavishnu. But are we talking about Srivas Thakur and Gadadhar Pandit? So I thought before we journey to find out about Vakreshwar Pandit, let's find out about Srivas. Srivas Thakur, it tells in Gaura Ganudesh Tipika, the who's who in the Gaura Lila, from Gaura Lila to Krishna Lila, back and forth, telling us who we have, our lineup. Srivas Thakur is none other than Narada Muni. And Srivas Thakur represents us, the jivas, the devotees. We have God in 5 features. Right? We have this Panchatattva, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in 5 features. And we have the principle of bhakti. We have our Bhakta avatar, our Yuga avatar. We have Sri Nityananda Prabhu. But Srivas is for us. That's our hope. This is our guiding light. And so Srivas Thakur as none other than Narada Muni. And if we look at what Narada Muni has done, he has his Bhakti Sutras. Right? Narada Muni is in charge of devotional service. Specifically, also deity worship. So Srila Prabhupada has said, if you have any difficulty with deity worship, if you have any fear of performing your deity worship correctly, properly, there are so many, 64 limbs and articles of worship, so many things to be done. If you are afraid of doing them correctly, or afraid of incurring any offenses in the process of performing your devotional service, he advises that we pray to Narada Muni to make everything smooth. And Narada Muni is always eager and ready to help everyone out. Sometimes in a straightforward manner, as he does with Dhruva Maharaj, initiating him at 5. As he does with Prahlad Maharaj, initiating him before he is born. He's always eager to help out the Vaishnavas. He goes and he initiates so many people. We spoke about Rukmini Devi. How did she hear about Krishna in order to fall in love with him? Narada Muni. How did Krishna find out about Rukmini to also fall in love with her? Narada Muni. So he factors in greatly during these pastimes, sometimes in a straightforward manner, and sometimes he helps the devotees in a very crooked manner. He has a wonderful sense of humor. Always willing not only to bring in the mischievousness within the Lord's pastimes, but never afraid to even laugh at himself. He takes so many different things upon his own head during these pastimes, just for the service, just in order to become part of these pastimes. So this is our Srivas. And in Mayapur, he stands so sweetly on the altar, just really sweet. We've got this wonderful, majestic Panchatattva, right? This progression. We've got Advaita Acharya, Nityananda Prabhu, who is incredible, Lord of my heart. Mahaprabhu, who is stealing everyone's hearts with his arms wide open. Gadadhar, who stands just to the side. But then you have Srivas, who just looks so sweet and compassionate. And indeed he is. But he gives us hope as jivas. So we have Srivas, Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, and all of the Bhakta Vrindas, all of the groups of Bhaktas. That's us. So we have this Panchatattva mantra, but no one's left out. Not even us, fallen as we are, trying, incomplete, making mistakes. We're still included. So Srivas gives us hope and encouragement that we too can make a difference. We too can progress in spiritual life. So this lecture is humbly, excitedly, enthusiastically dedicated to our dear Srivas Thakur, in hopes that he will somehow initiate us into deeper knowledge of the pastimes of his own Sriman Mahaprabhu. So Srivas is older than Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He is a friend of Advaita Acharya, And he's also a best friend to Haridas Thakur. Seems like everyone was a best friend to Haridas Thakur. But Advaita Acharya and Srivasa were both best friends to Haridas. This created a problem because Srivasa was a Brahmin and Haridas was, according to the caste system of the time, an untouchable and unseeable, as my Guru Maharaj even says. If anyone even saw him, if their shadow fell upon him, they'd have to go clean their house, take another bath, throw out all the food, all everything. Really cleanse. And this is from one Hindu to another. So essentially, we believe in the same things. But it's so interesting to note that once we start identifying with these bodily designations, as these bodily designations, right? There's one thing to identify with the experience. We understand we're in these bodies. There are things that are going to happen. And honestly and sincerely speaking, I'm not above it all enough to say, not this body. It doesn't affect me. Brush it off my shoulders. I'm not there yet. So there's one thing to identify with the experiences that are happening in this body, right? The karma that it comes with this body, the things that are going on in and around this body. But this identification as this soul identification. Interestingly enough, I have been kind of using social media to force me to be more spiritual. So I've been singing Hanuman Chalisa on TikTok. Because why not? And recently I got a comment and someone said, "Oh, you're not our culture. You are not of our race, but good to see that you're doing a good job." And I know it was supposed to be a compliment. But it rubs, it chafes a little. It's a little raw. And I thought, and I eventually finally wrote back. I said, it's so interesting. I'm singing about Hanumanji, who was a celestial Vanara. Which race are you talking about? Which race? We're all so eager to say this is my race and my culture and all. We're singing about Hanuman. They were a completely different race. If we want to talk about races, we're not their race. Right? There were humans. There were Vanaras. There was then Jambavan, who was a rickshaw, who was a race unto himself, by himself, created by Lord Brahma, and there was no one else in his race. It was just him. So if he really wanted to start a race war, it could just be him against everybody else. So I was just thinking, I was like, it's so interesting. If we really bring it down, what are we talking about? This is a culture which transcends time and geographical designations. But once we start identifying with that as the sole attribute of our devotion, of our religion, of our spiritual paths, we see so many designations. We see so many differences instead of seeing what binds us all together, which is that love for Krishna, that love for Sri Ram, that love for the pastimes of our Supreme Person. So I kind of said, thanks, but what race is it? Hanuman was a Vanara. Strictly speaking, none of us were of his race. And yet he's still giving us blessings. So Haridas Thakur was an untouchable, unseeable, unmentionable. No one wanted to have anything to do with him. Wasn't allowed in Puri temple. But Mahaprabhu gave his choicest mercy. Mahaprabhu would go visit him personally and bring him Lord Jagannath's prasad. So by materialistic designations, we could be this, that, or the other. And somehow or other, God himself might still find his way to come and see us personally. If we have that faith at heart, if we keep the faith, if we keep that conditioning, if we recondition our minds just to say, But Govinda, I'm yours. I'm your devotee, your friend. I'm your person, your family member. So this was Srivas. Srivas had the view of, but I belong to Krishna. We all belong to Krishna. We all belong to Mahaprabhu. So he's best friends with Haridas Thakur, and this compassion made him open to a lot of criticism, which also will factor in as we look at these different pastimes of Srivas Thakur's life. He was open to a lot of criticism, and oftentimes he took it in stride. Sometimes he wouldn't even reply. So, better than me. I had to give a reply. But for Srivas, oftentimes he wouldn't even reply. We have the the famous story of Chapal Gopal, who somehow wanted to defame the name of Srivas so much that he would put all the articles and paraphernalia of so many different ritualistic practices. He tried to show that Srivas was somehow more ignorant than others, right? Not of this culture. This high Brahminical standard, Srivas isn't there. He has all of these kirtans, he's chanting all this japa, but what is he really doing? And so he tried to say that, he's hypocritical. Outwardly, he paints himself as this great Mahan, this great personality, but inwardly, he's doing all kinds of deviations. So when Srivas found all of this paraphernalia outside his door in the morning, not only, as my Guru Maharaj says, not only did he not defend himself, but he called people to say, come see, look what I've been doing. You can all see it. But luckily, through the protection of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, no one believed him. So no one believed him. We can't believe what you're saying. We've seen through your actions, your words. You've shown everyone what kind of Vaishnav you really are. So they had no faith in what anyone else had to say. Which helps me to remember that the criticism will come. It'll keep coming. It'll never stop coming because symptom of the material world. Right? Sometimes you have an ailment, you have the diagnosis, but you have all these symptoms that are going to go along with it. So symptom of the material world is that the criticism is going to come. But also, when the criticism comes, it means that Krishna is going to protect us. If we keep the faith, if we keep that dedication, Krishna will actually protect us, personally. He doesn't leave his devotee stranded. And this is an important part of Srivas Thakur's life pastimes. Krishna does not leave his devotee stranded. So he protects him. As we see that Narada Muni tries to expedite the advent of Sri Krishna, he visits Kamsa. And he tells Kamsa, "Oh Kamsa, I see that you've been getting a little compassionate. Vasudeva promised to give you all the children born of Devaki. The first child was born. Beautiful child. His name is Kirtiman. You gave him back. What happened? You're all talk, no action." The Kamsa says, "Look, I'm not afraid of the first child. It's the 8th child that has been prophesied to kill me. Why do away with the others? I let him go home." Kamsa's thinking he's done a very good thing. Narada Muni thinks, but if Kamsa gets too compassionate, then he's going to rack up too many good points. Krishna won't want to do away with this demon if he starts showing compassion and good qualities. How to expedite this process? So he tells him, he says, "Kamsa, who are you putting your trust in? Think about this Vishnu, he's crafty. He already killed you once as Kalanemi. So now think about what you are really doing. You are giving the enemy an opportunity, an opening, a way in. And you know this Vishnu, if you give him any opportunity, He'll sneak in and take charge. He'll take over the whole thing. So who says who's the first child and who's the eighth child? Here comes says it's easy to see. First child, eighth child. Narada says, but if you put points on a circle, who can say where the circle begins and where the circle ends? It's quite subjective. So I can say that the circle starts here, but you may say that the circle starts there. So who's to say who's the first child and who's the eighth child? Better you do something to secure your place with all the children. And then he leaves. Who does that? Let me just plant this seed and then I leave. I've done my job. But Kamsa now thinks, wait a second. This Narada Muni, this Muni Raj, this great thinker, he's got a point. Maybe I should do away with all the children. Insurance policies. So he kills all the children. And in this way, it expedites the advent of Sri Krishna. Srivasa Thakur also expedites the coming of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He gathers together with Advaita Acharya, Haridas Thakur and others, and they fervently pray for Sri Krishna to advent during this Kali Yuga. And somehow give them some antidote to everything that is happening within the age of Kali. And this crying out, this intense prayer, is what causes the advent of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Shri Gaura Chandra Mahaprabhu ki jai. So we owe them such a great debt of gratitude, and I think I wind up saying this just about every Ekadashi lecture. We owe a great debt of gratitude to all of these acharyas. So we have a lot of debts. Luckily, the more we pray and the more we chant, the more Krishna settles all of those debts for us. So our key is to keep chanting and keep praying, keep doing what we're doing, while acknowledging that we owe such a huge debt to all of these compassionate souls who are working on our behalf. Srivasa Thakur was known as the shadow of Jagannath Mishra, the father of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Where Jagannath would go, Srivasa would go. Malini, the wife of Srivasa Thakur, helped in delivering Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. She played midwife. So when Mahaprabhu was born, Malini is there, Srivasa is there. And they even kind of named Srivasa as like an uncle. So he gets to be like an uncle figure. He gets to instruct the Lord of the universe. As Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu grows up, his father passes away. And Mahaprabhu later on goes to do his last rites in Gaya. It is in Gaya that he meets Ishwarapuri. And he takes initiation from him. And when he returns, he's a completely different person. He's completely changed. And prior to, let's backtrack just a little. So, as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu grows up, he's known first as Nimai Pandit, a great debater and logician. Brilliant mind. But he's using it for the purposes of argument. That's all. Just argument. The goal is to win the argument, and that is it. Srivasa tells him, Nimai, what a brilliant mind you have. If only you would use it in the service of Krishna. If only you would use it for bhakti, for devotion. If only you would dedicate all of your intelligence to learning about bhakti yoga. Who better to tell the Lord about this than Narada Muni, in charge of devotion, in charge of the Bhakti Sutras? But what fortune is this, to be able to preach to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who then says, Srivasa, I have no devotion, I have no bhakti, but if you bless me, then I'm sure in time it will come, and it will surprise everyone. If you bless me, what fortune is this? This is the great fortune of Narada Muni, now to be told, if you bless the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he'll get love for himself. Srivas always prays and wishes for the well-being of Nimai. And all of the devotees headed by Srivas wait and pray for the day when he will manifest such love of God and open the floodgates in the storehouse of the treasure trove of Krishna Prema. So now, Mahaprabhu goes to Gaya, receives initiation, and he's transformed. All this time, he'd been holding it in, holding back. But now the floodgates have opened. And everywhere he goes, he can do nothing but sing and chant the Mahamantra. So much so that everyone is thinking, what happened to him? He opened up a school, but now he's using the school to tell his students about Krishna Prema. Everywhere he goes on the streets, he's chanting about Krishna Prema. All roads lead back to Krishna Prema. He's obsessed. Some of the people tell Sachi, something's wrong with your son. We've never seen anything like this. We think there's some sort of ailment. Sachi's thinking, well, what do I do? What's wrong? They're thinking, maybe he's epileptic. Maybe he has some mental diversion issue. Right? So now, like, don't think that this is anything new. Now it's almost like they're trying to diagnose the Lord with ADHD. Right? So, like, they're thinking all of these things. He's got something. Something is wrong. Sachi says, well, what do I do? Some people say, listen, give him coconut water. Right? It'll reduce the heat in the body. Right? All the remedies come out. We've seen it. Anybody has anything, all the remedies come out from all different places. So some say, give him coconut water. This will reduce the heat in the body, which will somehow affect his brain chemistry for the better. Some people say, oh, do this mantra, circumambulate him with red chilies to take away the evil eye, all kinds of things. They finally say, you know what, just tie him up after sunset. They go to the person who they consider to be his uncle. They go to Srivas. They say, Srivas, what do we do? Even Mahaprabhu says, Srivas. They say that I'm afflicted with epilepsy. They say I've gone crazy. Srivas, what do you say? Srivas says, oh Sachi, your son is not crazy. Well, he is crazy, but it's a spiritual craziness. It's a spiritual madness. He's overtaken by the yearning for Krishna. He's overtaken by love of God. This is a devotion the likes of which I have never seen before. A devotional affliction that I wish I had. So Srivas now says, he's got devotion that I wish I could have. He goes from giving his blessings that Nimai will get this devotion to now wishing he had the level of devotion that Nimai is displaying. And Sachimata is quite appeased by this answer. Nimai is so appeased that he says, you know, there were so many Ayurvedic doctors and so many well-wishers who were giving me advice that I almost started to believe it. And I almost was ready to give up hope. But I trusted you as my advisor and my well-wisher, Srivas. If you had said that I was afflicted with any kind of material ailment, I immediately would have gone and drowned myself in the Ganga. No pressure. Like, imagine, had he not given the right answer? Like, thankfully, Mahaprabhu says, I would have gone and drowned myself in the Ganga, but because you've said, I can have full faith that this is nothing else but love for Krishna. Please give me shelter. Give me the mercy of the Vaishnavas. Give me the association of the Vaishnavas. This is our Supreme Lord. What humility. What incredible devotion. What sweetness. But this is our hope. That our Lord can interact with us in the same way. That this is how the Lord interacts with the jivas. That's us. Imperfect as we may be, stumbling on the path as we are, this is the example for us. Mahaprabhu, Nityananda Prabhu show what is possible at the height, the very pinnacle, the topmost crest of love for Krishna. Srivasa is there to show us what's possible for us. The road may be bumpy and the goal might seem very far, but Srivasa shows us the way. So he prays, "Oh my Lord, how can I advise you? It is only your mercy and your pastime, your Leela, that you've come to me for advice, knowing you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You just give me this love of God." Mahaprabhu says, "Very soon, don't worry, I'll do it." And he makes his house the headquarters for the Sankirtan Yagya. Srivasangan, the courtyard of Srivas, is made into the headquarters of Mahaprabhu's Harinam Sankirtan revolution. Which is great because we are currently celebrating a revolution. But it's a different kind of revolution. Right? For us in New York, America, we've got Independence Day. So it's only fitting that we talk about dependence and revolutions. So Srivas had this wonderful house with like banana tree plantation farms. And the banana trees were so high and so thick that after nightfall, you had no idea what was going on behind them. He had a built-in wall. Just yesterday, interestingly enough that we're talking about banana tree plantation farms, Nandi comes to me and she says, "Fun fact, Mom, a banana tree is not actually a tree, but it is a very large, overgrown herb." I said, "Wow." And then she walked away. That was it. So he had these very large banana trees, which are not actually trees, but very huge, overgrown herbs, that were a built-in wall so thick and so clustered together that no one could see anything that was going on after sundown. So this is where Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu chose to display his chanting. It was an exclusive party, which was a problem for many people because they were envious. So this Chapal Gopal was very envious. How is it that everybody's invited in and I'm not invited? Because it was invite only? And Mahaprabhu would know if there was anyone there who was not supposed to be there. He called several people out on several occasions, would stop the entire kirtan. And they would have rip-roaring kirtans, louder than all of the fireworks that are constantly going on from yesterday. Loud, roaring kirtans, so much so that it would wake up all the neighbors and disturb them all. But they had no idea what was going on. And they would do this all night. Nocturnal kirtans. Not the slow and meditative ones, which I always thought, isn't that interesting? Because sometimes, as a movement, we kind of start to think the slow meditative ones are the ones that have to appeal to the masses the most. But Mahaprabhu at night, when he was with all of his people, they chose to do the loudest rip-roaring kirtans, chanting at the top of their lungs all night. So this is Srivasa's house. This is the glory of Srivas. So this Chapal Gopal was very envious. It's the same Chapal Gopal who commits the offense and causes all of these rumors about Srivas and his extracurricular activities. And Srivas pays him no mind. Doesn't get offended. The Lord, however, does. And the Lord exacts a very interesting punishment on this Chapal Gopal. He inflicts him with leprosy. Chapal Gopal goes to Mahaprabhu. He says, "Oh my Lord, you are an ocean of mercy. Please give me your mercy." My Guru Maharaj says that Mahaprabhu, seeing into the heart of this Chapal Gopal, realizes that he's apologizing. Not necessarily sincerely because he doesn't want to commit the offense again, but because he has leprosy. So kind of like, oh, I got caught and I don't like the reaction. So now he's apologizing and praying. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in response to looking into his heart and seeing this insincerity, says, "No, I won't save you. Not only will I not save you, but you will spend thousands of years and many, many births like this suffering." And he leaves. When I was reflecting on this, I was remembering the pastime of Govardhan Hill. Indra gets angry. Krishna stops his puja, right? Tells all of the cowherd people, why do we need to worship Indra? He pours water on the ocean as well as the land. I don't see the ocean thanking him for anything. Better we worship Govardhan Hill. And as a very over-intelligent, sassy 8-year-old boy, 8-year-old boy, they follow his instructions. And then what happens? Devastation. Rain coming down so thick it looks like pillars, you can't see through it. They all run to Krishna. Well, we followed your instructions, now what? Now we're going to be wiped off the face of the map, quite literally, if you don't do something. You see how I curb this Indra's pride. And this young little boy walks up to this huge hill, mountain really, because it's been shrinking ever since, but he walks up to this mountain and lifts it on the pinky of his left hand. Not his dominant hand, his right hand, but his left hand. And holds it for 7 days. When Indra comes to apologize, Krishna refuses to even look at him. Why? Because he looks and he sees Indra's apologizing. Not so much because he's really sorry, but because he got caught. So seeing this insincerity, he refuses to even look at him. So Indra's offering, king of heaven, offering loads and loads of prayers, with his helmet shining, right, pressed at the ground, in the dust of Braj, and Krishna is just kind of uninterested. Imagine, you do battle with someone for 7 days and they defeat you, and you finally go to offer all of your homage, and this person is just kind of like, he's got so many other better things to do. Finally, Surabhi comes, and she prays. Indra did a wise thing bringing Surabhi with him. Then Krishna will pay attention, because he sees she's sincere. So the same with this Chapal Gopal, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu refuses to even acknowledge his existence until he really feels as though he is sincere about the offense that he's committed towards Srivasa. Until he's really understood the depth of Vaishnava aparad. Then he tells him, you go and you seek forgiveness from Srivasa. But Srivasa says, my Lord, I've already forgiven him. You know this. My Lord, you know I never took it into my heart at all. I hold no grievance against him. Please give him all of your mercy. And finally then, this is many years later. Years Chapal Gopal was suffering with leprosy. Years later, Mahaprabhu cures him. This humility is astonishing. And while Srivasa is there for our benefit, the example is so astounding. I can't even fathom. I get offended if somebody sends me like the wrong like reaction on a post. You know, you go on Facebook and you have to like swipe through the reactions, and you want to go for the one that says care, but then inadvertently you send the laughing one, and it's a really serious post, and now I think that you're laughing at my feelings, and then I'm offended because your finger just wasn't able to swipe good enough. Chapal Gopal had actually offended Srivas, and Srivas still took nothing. Meanwhile, there are people who don't even mean to offend me, but I've taken offense. But this dedication, this commitment to continue trying is what we can take from the path. Never stop trying. Whatever happens, we continue on the path of this bhakti yoga because the goal is exceptionally wonderful, sweeter than sweet. It's what we are hankering after. It's what we are always yearning for. The relationship that we want, the love that we want, the validation that we want is all there in the goal of Bhakti Yoga. It is all there in Krishna Prema. So we can take up the example to continue trying. Even from Chapal Gopal. He didn't stop apologizing. He didn't think, well, I apologized once, what to do? He was so afflicted. He was so in misery. He was miserable. He kept trying. And it paid off. So in the same way, we can keep trying. Our rounds are not perfect one day. Keep trying the next day. Keep trying that day even. Chant extra. There's no rule that says, oh, I chanted some rounds and they were not so good. Well, let me chant 2 more. Let me chant 2 more and see if I can really focus just for these 2 rounds. We keep trying. We keep going, no matter what. Because the goal is everything that we've wanted and more. We can't even fathom everything that is in the goal of Krishna Prema. So, moving along, because we have to, Srivas doesn't hold anything against Chapal Gopal, and Mahaprabhu finally relieves him of his affliction. This is Mahaprabhu's incredible mercy. So these kirtans not only angered the Brahmin community, the Vaishnava community, the Hindu community, but it angered the Muslims. Because at that time, Vaishnavas were not so able to practice their faith so publicly. And Mahaprabhu was changing all of that drastically. So they sent word to Srivas. They started spreading these rumors. Srivas, you're in trouble. We've told the Nawab. We've told him. We've told the governing, the prince, the king. We've told the Nawab. And now he's going to send his men to kill you. What is Srivas to do? Now he has literal death threats. Which is interesting to see. In the lives of these devotees, in the life of Haridas, he met with obstacle after obstacle, criticism after criticism. He was treated harshly. He was spoken to so horribly by even others of his own community. Srivas found so many different obstacles and criticisms. So what does this mean for us? It means it's natural. We should expect the reversals. We should expect the obstacles and even the criticism. But for Haridas and Srivas, putting up with it all was worth it for Krishna Prema. It was worth it for them to put up with all of that to associate with Mahaprabhu. These are symptoms of Kali Yuga. They come along with the territory. So they agree to be criticized. They agree to come into these situations where they have to go through all of these obstacles. They're pure devotees. They shouldn't have to. They wouldn't have to. But why? To show us that it's natural. It's not just that we chant Hare Krishna and then everything is smooth sailing. Why? Because it's a material world, not our eternal home. That place with no fear, no obstacles, that place where everything is smooth sailing, that place that is our real home is not this. So sometimes we hear and we think and we come across people and they say, but I've been praying to God. Why would God do this? To remind us that this is not where we belong. Even God has obstacles. This is not where we belong. So Srivas gets these death threats, and he is afraid. Also, a very normal reaction. So if we've ever felt afraid in the course of performing our devotional service, looking at the obstacles in front of us, it's natural. It's normal. It's okay. It doesn't make you any less of a devotee to have this fear. Srivas was afraid for his life. He goes into his house, closes the door tightly, and prays to his Shila, which is an Ashringa Shila. He begins praying desperately, intensely. He tells the entire situation to his Shila, and he prays, you please protect me. You help me to perform my devotional service. Please help me, my Lord. Help me save my life. Mahaprabhu, who had been strolling along the banks of the Ganga, hears these prayers. And he manifests the intensely hot anger of Lord Nrsimha. He also manifests 8 arms, equipped with weapons. And he goes to the house of Srivas, and he stands outside the door, and he says, Srivas, open the door. He's banging on the door now. And Srivas doesn't know what to think. Is it the guards? Is it the Nawab? We don't know. And so Srivas is not opening the door. And he will not respond. Srivas, open the door. Not me. Not today. So he refuses to open the door. Mahaprabhu says, that same Lord that you have been praying to quietly, secretly, that same Nrsimhadev now is standing outside your door waiting for you. Srivas, open this door right now. And Srivas is now thinking, I'm sorry. Before I was thinking that it was the Nawab and his men, and now you're telling me that it's Lord Nrsimhadev standing outside my door. What is happening? And our dear Amarendra Prabhu gives a wonderful lecture with the same point. And he says, how many of us would really open the door if Lord Nrsimhadev said he was on the other side and he sounded that angry? Would we really open it? And then he says, I wager to think that some people would open it and then hide behind the door so that like whoever was next in line could receive the full brunt of the Lord's mercy. And so Srivas does not open the door. Lord Chaitanya kicks the door in a very action-packed heroic move. He kicks open the door, strides in, and he says, oh Srivas, I am Lord Nrsimha. I am your Nrsimhadev that you were so eagerly, desperately praying to for devotion. You take shelter of my lotus feet right this instant. But he still looks a little bit like Mahaprabhu. So now Srivas is confused. Because he's heard from Sriman Mahaprabhu, Jiva cannot become God. He says, he just told me he's not God. And now he's telling me he is God. What am I supposed to do? He commands him, I command you, Srivas, you fall at my lotus feet. Well, who can ignore a command like that? Srivas falls at the Lord's lotus feet. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, bring your entire family. Okay. He brings his whole family, extended family, right? All the brothers, their children, joint family. Everybody was living in this house. He brings them all. And Mahaprabhu gives his blessings and benedictions upon them. He touches them. Not only does he give his protection, but he gives them all love of God. This is our Mahaprabhu. This is the example of Srivas. So what do we do when we're in trouble? We should not think. Pure devotees don't ask Krishna for anything. We should follow in the footsteps of Srivas and Prahlad and Dhruva and countless other devotees who have ever been in trouble. And we should run to our lords and tell them the entire situation. In fact, we should tell them the entire situation every day, good or bad. In South India, for so long, the devotees, the kings, would report to Ranganath. That was the real king. The king would just be a steward, a placeholder on the throne. They would actually report to Ranganath, give him a day's report every day. They would say, I'm ruling on behalf of you, my lord, but I understand that you are king of kings. In Jagannath Puri, the kings for so many generations would treat Lord Jagannath as their own family member, which meant they would go and tell him everything. Full day's report every day, good or bad. There's a pastime. One king. There was a battle. And he went into it and he lost. He went to Lord Jagannath. He said, oh, Lord Jagannath, you're my family member. How could I lose? Where were you? Lord Jagannath says, you didn't tell me. I would have been there for you, but you didn't ask me. So I stayed where I was. I thought you handled it. No problem. And the king says, well, now I'm asking you. Lord Jagannath says, challenge them to battle again. Goes and he challenges the villages to battle again. He wakes up in the morning. He goes to set off in battle. He finally gets there. There's a woman that stops him on the way. She says, excuse me, you look very expensive. Are you the king? He says, yes, I am. She says, you owe me money. He says, what? He says, yeah, you owe me money. 2 of your soldiers came through this way before you, sometime just before sunrise. They came through this way. They saw me. They said, oh, auntie, do you have any yogurt and milk available? She says, I do. And they said, can you give us some? We're so intensely hungry. We've set out for battle, but we found out that we're very hungry along the way. She says, those 2 soldiers ate up all of my milk and yogurt, so you owe me. This king says, what do they look like? She said, one was very dark, sitting on a white horse. One was very light, sitting on a dark horse. The king says, 1 second, let me handle this business. I'll come back and pay you. And when he arrives there, he finds out that the army has already been completely defeated and decimated. He realizes then that the 2 soldiers who were fighting in his name were none other than Lord Jagannath and Balabhadra. He goes back to that woman and not only pays her for the milk and yogurt, but gifts her villages. Villages that then get named after this pastime. So, we are encouraged to see the Lord as our very own family member. What does maintainer and protector mean? Good or bad, it means I'm going to come to you with my everyday occurrences, just as we would with any family member. Do we say, this person is my family, so I'm just never going to call them? No, we say this person is my family, so I should call them more. I should call them every day. And if I don't call them, they should call me and say, why haven't I spoken to you? We should be so eager to speak with our family members. And so this is how we should think of the Lord of our lives, with this desperation that Srivasa was praying with. He told his Shalagram Shila everything. We should be telling our Lord everything. This is the meaning of relationship. This is how we strengthen our sambandha. That's the beginning. Right? Madan Mohan is our beginning Lord. This is how we establish our relationship. By making one. By telling him everything. Whether we think that we are qualified to ask for assistance or not, still tell him. Let him decide. Which brings us to the very last point. Dependence. It's Independence Day. So naturally we have to talk about dependence. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu goes to Srivasa and he says, you know, Srivasa, you have a nice house, wife, children, everything. But I never see you working. How do you have such a nice house? Like no one's ever seen you go to work. No one's ever seen you come home from work. Like, what is it that you are doing? Do you have some sort of mystic abilities? Is this some sort of underhanded, like under-the-table scheme that you have going on? What's happening with you? Shiva says, my Lord, it's all your mercy. What are you saying? I simply chant the holy names, and Krishna provides. And Mahaprabhu says, I get it. I understand what you're saying, but how? How does this happen? Srivasa says, I simply chant and I clap. What does clapping 3 times mean? So that means that I clap 3 times and I wait 3 days. In those 3 days, I increase my chanting. And if there's something that I need, in those 3 days, I'll have my answer. Either I will get it, and Krishna will have decided that it is for me, or I won't get it, and Krishna will have decided that it's not mine. So, I just increase my chanting. And in this way, I'll wait 3 days, and I'll chant non-stop in those 3 days. After 3 days, if I don't have it, wasn't meant for me to have. If I do have it, then Krishna has made all arrangements in my life. How wonderful is my Lord. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that's interesting. But what about food? What about your family? And Srivasa says, it has never failed me. But if you challenge me, my Lord, then so be it. I'll clap 3 times. And at the end of 3 days, I'll increase my chanting. All these 3 days, at the end of those 3 days, if it doesn't happen, if the food doesn't come, then I'll happily throw myself into the Ganga. This was the faith that Srivasa had. Such intense, incredible faith and dedication and dependence. So much so that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, no, Srivasa, I'm not challenging you. Don't throw down that challenge. In fact, not only am I not challenging you, but I bless you because of your incredible dependence on Sri Krishna. You will always be maintained and cared for. This whole world can crumble, but you will never be lacking in anything. Krishna never ever leaves his devotees stranded. Remember I said that at the beginning? This dependence means that we have faith that Krishna never leaves his devotees stranded. Where have we seen that he's just, well, I've taken everything away and I've left them stranded with nothing else left to do. And that's how they died. Not Krishna's devotees. Krishna makes sure that his devotees are cared for. And even if it looks like externally they don't have anything materially, internally, they're so fixed in spiritual opulence that it doesn't matter to them. But Krishna always gives us what we need. At all times. And in the lecture that our dear Amarendra Prabhu gave, he cited one even modern day example. There was a woman, and she was worried about the state of her house, didn't have a house, all kinds of things. She was on her own with children, trying to do the best she could. The first thing she did was increase her chanting. She started chanting 64 rounds a day. And then slowly but surely, everything came. To the point where she went from having no house to then having a house, like an apartment that she had, and then an apartment that she rented out. So then she went from nothing to 2 apartments to spare. And she was also a teacher. So it wasn't that she did nothing. She put in her endeavor. But she put her faith and her dependence on Krishna's mercy. This is Srivasa. His dependence on Krishna's mercy was so intense and so severe. He believed. He had that conviction that absolutely after these 3 days, if I don't have it, then it's not meant for me. But if I do have it, it is because Krishna made all arrangements and provisions. And he said, it's never failed me. I have never been let down. And then Mahaprabhu said, I will uphold that promise. You will never be let down. This world may come crumbling down, but you will never lack anything. And he didn't. So on a day like Ekadashi, imagine if the first thing when we were faced with all of our troubles and our worries and anxieties, imagine if the first thing we thought to do was to increase our chanting in order to solve our problems. I wanted to take that lesson into heart and put it on everything. If I feel an anxiety about anything, the first thing I want to do is increase my japa. Even if I think these are not the best rounds, or these are anxiety rounds, these are rounds where I'm chanting the holy name, but I'm still thinking about whatever it is, let me increase my japa first. Let me increase the conversations I have with my Govinda. And then watch as he performs miracles. Yes, we still put in our endeavor. Yes, we still do our work. Yes, we still do what we can. But what if? What if we found ways to increase the time spent with him as a way to first and foremost solve our problems? I was looking at memories, and there was a post that I had made last year. And you ever find yourself in a situation where someone falls in love with someone, but then everyone around them tells them that person's horrible for you? But they can't seem to get themselves away from thinking about that person. They are so intent, so focused on it that it can't be. There's nothing that you can say to convince that person that the other person is wrong for them. Imagine if we could put all of that conviction into having faith that Krishna will provide for us. Our minds are so quick to think that Krishna won't provide for us, or to worry what will happen if Krishna doesn't provide for us. What if we put our incredible mind power, that force of will? I'm a stubborn person. If I put all that stubborn belief into knowing that Krishna is going to provide for me, imagine the leaps and bounds that I would grow in my devotional service. Sometimes we're so bent on proving. How can you prove to me that God is real? But imagine if it was the other way around. That no one could be able to prove that he wasn't. We had such conviction that no one could prove that he wasn't real. This is that same kind of conviction. Like a person obsessed with the love affair from the wrong side of the tracks, you know? That Romeo and Juliet kind of archetype where no one can convince you otherwise. We'll wait years and years just for a chance to speak to that person. This is the conviction that Srivasa had about his devotion. And Srivasa is known for this kind of conviction. We spoke about this before. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes and he says, you've let this Nityananda Prabhu stay in your house, but who is he really? Where does he come from? No one knows. He just showed up one day. Srivasa says, Lord Nityananda is my life and soul. I love him. Even if I saw him going into a bar and associating with prostitutes drunk on wine, I would not give up my love for Nityananda. I would not give up my dependence on him. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu celebrates this conviction. This is to be celebrated. You, Srivasa, you are the example. You will always have love of God. In fact, because of him, his whole family has love of God. This is what we need. That dependence. Not on Krishna as our order carrier, but dependence on Krishna as our dearest friend, our family member, the love of our life. Which means that the love of our life will never let us down. He will never put us in a situation which is horrible for us. Sometimes these situations seem like they hurt. But if we can increase our japa first and continue working, we will bind up Krishna just like Mother Yashoda. I wanted to take that to heart so much that Srivasa says, I just increase my japa. If I face any difficulty, I increase my chanting of the holy names. I wait 3 days and I have an answer. Imagine if we could put all of our fire and passion and conviction into that. We chant 3 days and see what answer Krishna gives. We're all oracles then. Krishna's just waiting to speak to us. So I thank you for being with me. I thank you so much for allowing me to come to any of these realizations. Thank you for giving me the chance to research again, to think about our Panchatattva, to think about our sweet, sweet Srivas. Every time I do one of these lectures, I feel like this personality is becoming my favorite. But then that happens with every personality. So now it's like this personality is becoming my favorite. Srivas is becoming my favorite in a way that is ever fresh and ever new. So I thank you all so much for being with me. Thank you for going on this journey of discovery of Bhakti Yoga with me. And I'm so looking forward to seeing you all in the next Ekadashi. Srivas Thakur Mahashai ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrind ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Radha Murlidhar ki jai. Shri Radha Govinda Dev ki jai. Shri Gaura Chandra Mahaprabhu ki jai. Ekadashi Devi ki jai. I'll see you all again soon. Hare Krishna.